Colby Behringer glanced over at the sweet little Piggy sitting in the passenger seat of his pickup truck. She was shy, more so than any of his other conquests, and that had caused him to have to work harder and longer than he was used to. But it would be worth it, because she was young and cute as hell. He couldn't wait to have a taste. She was chubby but not fat, which was the way he liked them, partly because he was drawn to a girl with curves, but mostly because chubby girls were easy prey. They always fell victim to the unrealistic Hollywood standards for beauty, and that made them ripe for the kill, so to speak, because they would literally do anything if you only showed them a little attention and told them they were pretty. He liked to think that little piggies were good for one thing, and that was so he could make them squeal. And he had made more than a few of them squeal in the past year, and this thought caused a hungry smile to slither across his face. Colby knew he wasn't attractive by Hollywood standards either, but that worked out perfectly for him. He was just good-looking enough to cause these chubby girls to be flattered, but not so good-looking to raise their suspicion. But even so, Gigi Haddonfield had taken longer to agree to a date than what he was used to. She had finally told him she'd go out with him, but on one condition. He had to come to her house and meet her two sisters and her mama. It had been 2 months since his last conquest. That had been Mitzi Wilson. She'd given in to his charms after only a week, and he had slept with her twice before she figured out that he was only using her. He'd been a little too careless in his conversation with his cousin Jeff. She walked up behind him when he had been telling Jeff how she was such a nasty little piggy. For the briefest moment, he'd feared Mitzi would tell everyone about him, how he really didn't care about her and was only using her. But he saw the shame in her eyes, and he knew she'd keep her little piggy mouth shut. But still, after that, he'd had a dry spell that lasted way too long. Then he had stepped into Pennywise ice cream parlor and had seen Gigi sitting there, sipping on a milkshake. And he knew that he had to have her. He wanted her because she was so damn cute and had perfect curves, but also because she exuded a naivete and innocence that he just had to taint. He'd begun surreptitiously following her and creating ways to make their paths cross. He took those moments to slowly earn her trust by making small talk and dropping the occasional non-threatening compliments about her looks. It took nearly a month, but she'd finally accepted his advances. So here he was, on his way to meet her mama and two sisters. On one level, this frustrated him, having to meet the family. He'd had to do it before with a few of his other little piggies, though surprisingly not very often. You'd think that parents would be a little bit more cautious in screening their daughters' dates. But that's another reason why he chose chubby girls. Their parents were so happy that their daughters finally had a love interest that they literally pushed the girls into his Dodge Ram. Sometimes it was literally like shooting fish in a barrel. Or a better analogy would be it was easy as slopping the pigs. They literally ran to the meal he had to offer. Tonight would be a first, though, in that there were sisters involved. Up to this point, none of his conquests had had any sisters. A couple of them had brothers. He was surprised at how many didn't have dads, but that only helped him because those girls had body issues and daddy issues. As he drove and considered this information, He fantasized that maybe he'd have himself one of those penthouse letter moments where Gigi's sisters were also a couple of lonely little piggies willing to do anything for attention. A hungry smile spread across his face. He caught it in time to soften it into something less predatory. Gigi sat beside him, her hands in her lap. She was nervously picking at the hem of her shorts. "Why are you smiling?" she asked. Colby was careful not to let his eyes linger on her thighs. They were perfect, nice and full, thick in a good way. He gave a casual shrug. "Well, I'm just glad you finally said yes, and I'm eager to meet your family, and I just want them to like me." Gigi had full lips and the prettiest hazel-colored eyes. She flashed a shy smile at him. He saw hopefulness and something else. Worry? Maybe fear? "I do too," she said. Then her smile faded. He didn't like her response. He needed to find out what exactly it was and deal with it. "I sense you holding back. Can you tell me what you're thinking? If you think they won't like me, just tell me what it is and I need to do, and I'll do it." Gigi instinctively reached to put a comforting hand on his arm, but stopped short. Colby knew it was likely because she was one of those types of girls who always felt the need to comfort others, though no one ever comforted her. "It's not that," she said. "It's just that Hazel and Wisteria are older than me, and they've done this before. They are more experienced than me, and you're my first." Her cheeks flushed bright red. She covered her face with her hands. "Oh my gosh, I didn't mean that to sound like it did. I'm so embarrassed." Colby allowed a nonchalant chuckle. In his kindest, most understanding voice, he said, "Aw, come on now, Gigi. I knew what you meant. It means a lot to me that you found me interesting enough to let me be your first date. And I promise to be as nice as I can be to your mama and sisters." Gigi's face had regained its natural color. "I told them about you, and they promised to be nice to you and not give you too hard a time by asking a lot of questions, and I do think you'll like them. They're really nice. Well, Wisteria is. Hazel can be a handful, but I'm most concerned about Mama. She's really picky when it comes to guys my sisters bring home, and a while back she didn't like one of Hazel's boyfriends. In fact, she hated him, and all that did was make Hazel want him more." Colby found this bit of information interesting and hopeful. Colby and Gigi had not even held hands, but because of what she'd just said, he knew that tonight would change all that. He felt in his gut that if her sisters liked him, that he could at least make it to second base with Gigi, maybe even third. But if her mama hated him, well, that might push cute little Gigi into rebellion. And if that happened, he was definitely making it to third base and probably all the way home. The thought of that made him squirm a little in his seat. "Well, then, I promise to be a complete gentleman to your mama and as entertaining as possible to Hazel and Wisteria." This time when Gigi smiled, there was nothing but hope shining in them. "Good," she said. Then, to his surprise, she reached out for his hand. He gave it to her, and she awkwardly held it in hers. She took her other hand and placed it on his bicep and gave it a tiny squeeze. He noticed that she again blushed. He let the moment linger. He liked her hands. She had done her nails for him. They were painted a neutral gray, and her hand was soft, and he gave it a gentle squeeze. "So I guess we're just going to spend some time with your family, then I'm taking you to Dante Inferno's for pizza. Does that sound good?" "Sure," Gigi said, smiling and nodding her head. She had also curled her hair for him, and the curls bounced against her shoulders. He liked that. He couldn't wait to grab a handful and pull. "Yeah, that's the plan," she said. She gave his hand a more confident squeeze, flashed him a dimpled smile, and said, "I can't wait. Tonight's going to be fun." "Yeah, it is," he replied. Though his words were given in a light, non-threatening tone, in his mind they resonated with lustful intent. He was going to make tonight fun, at least for him. He remembered the first time with Mitzi. He'd gotten 2.5 beers into her, and the stuff she was willing to do was surprising. But she had just turned 21. Gigi was only 19. Beer made it easier, but he'd done this kind of thing enough times without beer to know that he'd be able to figure out whatever it was that would charm her into the back seat of his truck. He glanced over at Gigi's thighs. He squirmed again in the seat as he turned off the county road and onto a long dirt lane that wound through the countryside. Eventually, the lane ended at a double-wide trailer. He'd seen some pretty crappy trailers around these parts, but this one was nice. It looked new and was painted in corn silk yellow with aquamarine striping and had big wooden decks at the front and back. The yard was recently mowed and carefully tended, and all around the property were numerous herb and flower gardens. Butterflies flitted from place to place. Bees buzzed around the flowers. Birds sang, and in the distance he thought he heard a loon give its insane asylum cry. He parked the truck beside a yellow delivery van that appeared to be from the 1950s. A closer look showed him that it was a lovingly restored van from the old Bedford Company. On the side was painted the logo of Mama Glory's Heavenly Spices. It displayed a caricature of a woman with Dolly Parton hair and a Paula Deen smile, holding a bottle of spices in one hand and a bottle of hot sauce in the other. In a semicircle above her head was the caption, "The best spices and sauces for your barbecue." Below the caricature was written, "So good it makes your piggy squeal." Colby found this interesting and a bit confusing. "Your mom is Mama Glory?" Gigi shrugged and nodded. "Yeah, I know what you're thinking. She's one of the most successful business owners here in Nevermore Hollows, and she sells her herbs and spices and hot sauces all over the world, so why would we live in a trailer in the woods?" Colby wouldn't have put the question that way because it would have made him sound crass, but he had to admit it was what he was thinking. Well, yeah, I mean, she's the spice queen. Nobody barbecues anywhere in the world doesn't have some of her spices and hot sauces handy. She could probably afford one of the big houses on the bluff that overlooks the bay or one of the historic mansions in town, so why the trailer and why way out here? Gigi gave a cute shrug of her shoulders and flashed him another one of those sweet, dimply smiles. "Well, Mama has always taught me and my sisters that success isn't about being a slave to materialism. We don't use our success to buy expensive things. We use it to help us live even more simply. It's backward thinking for modern people, but I think this is how life was supposed to be. We don't have a worry in the world." As Gigi said this, Colby could see that she believed this crazy way of thinking. Man, if he had Mama Glory's bank account, he'd have the biggest house he could find and a bass boat and a new truck, even though his was only 2 years old and he was still paying on it. He wouldn't be living out in the sticks in a trailer. But instead of making her feel bad about what she believed and ruining his chances, he said, "That's very zen, Gigi. I like it." They got out of his ram and headed to the trailer. As they walked, he had to admit that it was very peaceful out here. Then the idea struck him that he might want to change his plan. Maybe he should be less concerned about getting into Gigi's pants tonight and instead thinking of the long game. He was down for marrying into a wealthy family, even if they didn't believe in spending their wealth. If he got into the family, maybe he could change that line of thinking. Hell, even if they made him sign a prenup, he could still get something out of it, especially if he got Gigi pregnant. Gigi was walking up the steps to the door. He looked at her thighs and her nice, plump butt. Oh, I'm getting something out of this, he thought. One way or another, I'm going to get a taste of this little piggy. Gigi stepped through the door into the trailer. Colby followed. Again, he was surprised at how low-key everything was. The furniture was inexpensive yet tasteful. The art on the walls appeared to be original pieces depicting abstract shapes and tribalistic human and animal designs, which reminded Colby of something you'd see painted on a cave wall. The trailer was spotless and dust-free and had the air of lower middle-class frugality instead of wealth that had to be in the tens of millions. There were two things inside the trailer that were definitely not low-key. That was Gigi's sisters, Hazel and Wisteria. They were stunning. Both were gloriously curvy, and they were not shy about showing off what Mother Nature had blessed them with. Upon seeing them, Colby's penthouse letters fantasy was aroused, and that made his heart skip a beat. Wisteria was making a salad at the bar that separated the kitchen from the living room. She was the tallest of the sisters and was wearing overalls and a tank top that hugged every curve. She had her dark hair pulled back into a ponytail. However, as much as a treat to the eyes as Wisteria was, Hazel was the star of Colby's mental porn show. She wore Daisy Dukes and cowboy boots and a T-shirt that she had cut up in such a way that showed her belly button and accentuated her considerable cleavage. She had her brown hair twisted into two braids that hung over each shoulder. She leaned against the bar, nibbling on a carrot she'd stolen from the salad. When she saw Colby, she flashed him with a mischievous smile. Colby thought that little Gigi was a treat for the eyes, but her cuteness paled in comparison to her sister's. No wonder she was so self-conscious and shy. "These are my sisters," Gigi said. "Wisteria is the one making the salad, and Hazel is the one supervising, as usual." Hazel playfully scrunched her nose at Gigi. "Somebody's got to be the boss when Mama ain't here." Just then, the kitchen door opened and Mama Glory stepped in from the backyard. She was carrying a basket of vegetables she'd picked from one of the gardens. Though she was one of Nevermore Hollow's most successful entrepreneurs, Colby had never seen what she really looked like. He'd only ever seen the logo with the cartoon caricature, and though she had big hair and a bright smile, she looked nothing like Dolly Parton or Paula Deen. In fact, she reminded Colby of the actress Christina Hendricks, only Mama Glory was blonde, where the actress was a redhead. She was in her 40s and walked with vitality and confidence that made her seem much younger. She set the basket on the kitchen counter and walked toward Colby with her hand offered. He took it. Her handshake was confident, though not dominating. She looked at him directly in the eyes, and he felt that she had the ability to see him for who he really was. And for a moment, he felt ashamed. But he pushed all that down, hid his true nature and his carnal desires behind his own direct stare and aw-shucks smile that had worked so well for him in the past. He said, "I'm Colby. Nice to meet you." She let their handshake linger a moment. Then she said, "I'm Glory, and I'm glad to finally meet you. Gigi has told us a lot about you, and I appreciate that you allow us to be a bit old-fashioned in our desires to size you up." Colby gave a self-deprecating shrug that had put many parents at ease. "I completely understand, ma'am. You can't be too careful nowadays with all the freaks and all that like to take advantage of women." Mama Glory considered his statement. "That is an unfortunate truth, Colby." Then she motioned to the couch. "Please have a seat and let us get to know you better. Would you like something to drink? We have water, tea, or beer." Colby considered having a beer, but felt that maybe he was being tested. How would it look if he drank a beer then got behind the wheel with Gigi? Saying he wanted water would seem to be the wrong answer as well, like he would be trying too hard to show he was no threat to her daughter. So he went with the safest answer. Tea would be great. He took a seat on the couch while Gigi poured his tea from a glass pitcher. She handed it to him, then sat beside him. Mama Glory took a seat in a chair across from them. "So," Hazel said, a playful tone to her words, "you're a nice-looking man. What are your intentions with my sister?" Colby was surprised at Hazel's directness. "Well, he stammered, I figured we'd keep it simple. Pizza at Dante Inferno's, then just walk around town and get to know each other better." He took a sip of the tea. It was wonderful, and did he detect a hint of mint? Hazel didn't take her eyes off Colby. They glimmered almost as brightly as her playful smile. Instead of backing off on her directness, she said, "Corman's Drive-In is open. You didn't want to take her there and make out in the back seat of your truck?" Wisteria snorted a laugh, and Gigi gave an embarrassed groan. Mama Glory shot Hazel a surprised look. "Hazel, that's too much." Then she turned her attention back to Colby. "I apologize for my daughter's approach, but she does have a valid question. I do wonder if you are genuinely a good guy, or is this just a ruse to get us all to like you?" Colby was in uncharted territory. He'd never had a parent ask such a piercing question about his ultimate intent. While he quickly considered his response, he couldn't help but give an uncomfortable shift in the way he was sitting. This time it wasn't because he was turned on thinking about what he was going to do to Gigi. It was because he knew a wrong answer would expose him for what he really was, which was a predator. He was comfortable being a predator. It was the way of the world. You were either a predator or prey. But for the first time ever, he was up against a woman who was not willing to just offer her daughter up to be devoured like all the other mothers he'd met. And this meant that for the first time, he had to be on guard in a way that he'd never had to be in the past. "Look, ma'am," he said, layering on as much of his good old boy charm that he could, "I know there's a lot of guys out there who jerks, but I really do like Gigi. She's sweet and smart, and I like those qualities. They resonate with me, and I just want to get to know her a little better." As he spoke, Mama Glory was intently focused on his eyes, as if she could see through them and into his brain to see the lie he'd just told. After a moment, she nodded, then turned to her daughters. "He's almost ready." Colby wondered what she meant by that, but before he could ask, she said, "I'm going to change. Please have dinner ready by the time I'm done." She got up and stepped out the back door, leaving Colby with Gigi and her sisters. Wisteria turned from the counter and glanced out the back window. After a long moment, she said, "Okay, she's gone." She slid the straps of her overalls off her shoulders and let them fall to the floor. "Oh, yeah," Hazel said. She had a naughty smile on her face. She popped the button on her Daisy Dukes and pulled down the zipper. "It's time to play." Colby was so stunned by the erotic turn of events that he forgot Glory's strange statement, not to mention why she left the trailer to change instead of going to her bedroom. His heart was racing and he was flushed with excitement. He couldn't believe what was happening. His mind was spinning with confusion and lust. Gigi gave a nervous giggle. Her cheeks were red with embarrassment. Wisteria and Hazel have done this before, but not me. I'm nervous. Colby had to admit that he was a little more than nervous. His heart was pounding so hard his ears were ringing. His breath was rapid. He felt tingly and he began to sweat. He wondered if this feeling was caused by the fact that he was about to live out every man's fantasy. But then his vision blurred and darkened around the edges. He realized that his condition was not the result of his lust. He tried to speak, but his lips wouldn't work. His whole body was now numb. Then it hit him. He had been drugged. He slowly glanced over at the tea he'd drank. They must have slipped something in the tea, and the whole conversation was to allow time for the drug to work. But why? Gigi stood and looked down at him. You're my first, she said, and I'm really glad it's you because of what you did to Mitzi. Hazel was now fully naked. She stood beside Gigi and said, See, Misty is a close friend of the family. You might think that you ruined her to the point that she was too embarrassed to tell anyone, but she told us, and tonight you get what you deserve, you pig. Gigi started taking off her clothes, and as his vision darkened to black, the last thing he saw was Wisteria, Gigi, and Hazel standing over him, naked with hungry smiles on their faces. Sometime later, Colby came awake. He was groggy. His mouth tasted as if it was full of cotton. His vision was blurry. He could see that it was nighttime and he was not in the trailer. And he was hot. Sweat poured down his face. He tried to reach up to wipe the sweat away, but realized that he couldn't move his arms. They were pinned to his sides. His vision began to clear just enough that he realized he was in the woods, in a clearing. A full moon hung above the trees like the eye of judgment. Somewhere in the distance he heard the psychotic cry of the loon. He realized that there were a couple tiki torches set into the ground within his field of view. They cast their yellow glow around the clearing, making the woods beyond as black as the abyss. He heard a voice behind him. It was Hazel. Oh, look, the piggy is awake. He tried to turn, but his body wouldn't respond. He could only turn his head about 90 degrees to the left or right. He was unable to see Hazel. But then she stepped around him. She was still naked. He looked up at her, his fuzzy mind not understanding why she towered over him. It didn't help that sweat poured down his face and into his eyes, making her blurry all around the edges. She squatted down and looked at him. Then he realized why he couldn't move, and adrenaline shot through his body, and the fuzz in his brain dissolved. He was buried from the neck down. Only his head was exposed above the ground. He spoke. His voice was ragged with terror. What's going on? What's happening? Hazel let her tongue play across her lips. It was both seductive and hungry. Oh, little piggy, we're here to party. There was movement to Colby's left. He twisted his head and saw Wisteria. She was also naked. Then Gigi stepped into view. The flickering shadows caused by the tiki torchlights seemed to fondle her curves. Wisteria and Hazel have always been the ones to lure the men, she said. Mama Glory finally let me do it. Like I said, you're my first. Colby moaned. The sweat poured down his lips and into his mouth. It tasted like salt and terror. What are you going to do to me? Wisteria gave him the look a teacher would give a dense student. Oh, come on now. It should be obvious. Yeah, Hazel said. You call your conquest little piggies, but you're the real pig. And tonight, you're our pig. And pigs are only good for one thing, Wisteria said. Colby's body was shot so full of adrenaline that he didn't realize just how hot it was getting. But now, the heat on his buried body was becoming too much to ignore. And that's for eating, Hazel said. And you're going to be a tasty pig for sure. Especially considering we covered you in some of Mama's best spices before putting you in the ground. Hazel's words chewed through the fog in Colby's mind. He understood that he had been buried very much like a pig in the ground at a luau or backyard barbecue. The heat must be caused by hot coal. These girls were literally cooking him, and they were going to eat him. What? Oh, God, no, please, no, he cried. Let me go. I won't tell anybody, I promise. Just let me go. Mama Glory stepped from the darkness of the woods. She was also naked, and there were symbols of distorted faces with mouths full of sharpened teeth painted on her body. She had affixed 2 tiny goat horns onto her head, and they poked through her big hair. Listen to the piggy squeal, she said. Wisteria and Hazel laughed aloud. Gigi giggled nervously. Did I do good, Mama? Is he a good one? Mama Glory gave Gigi a loving smile. Yes, honey, you did good. Let me go, Colby begged. Please, let me go. Mama Glory shook her head. Now, why would we do that and not have anything to serve at our little party to celebrate the full moon? Colby's mind reeled. No, you can't. That's cannibalism. You can't do that. Mama Glory motioned at her daughters. I figure the coals are heating up to the point he's going to start screaming, and that means we have about 5 minutes before he loses consciousness. Girls, let's dance. Wisteria, Hazel, and Gigi giggled in delight. Then, under the light of the pale moon, accentuated by the flickering gold flames of the tiki torches, Mama Glory and her daughters danced around their feast, while the little piggy screamed.